work. Everybody heard that, so you can verify that it is being recorded. So, okay, cool. And we can send this to our fellow meetup participants who cannot make it. All right, cool. So, is everybody ready to get started? Can one person see if they can unmute themselves and say something? I just want to see if your unmute works now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you have any questions when I'm talking, feel free just to jump in. Um, Again, this is my first time talking about this topic. So I would love feedback on it. It's something I've thought long and hard about. Yeah, Tina. So usually I have a Zoom. Tina asked if I could post the Zoom link earlier. Usually it auto generates, and I didn't see that it hadn't. Um, so, anyways, I had to go manually put the Zoom link in. Usually, it just links to Zoom for me, but it didn't do that for some reason. So, I apologize for putting the link there so late. I just looked and saw the link because I was going to the website to get the link for the meeting. I was like, oh, it's not here. So I had to create one. Yeah, I usually I don't think about where the link is. I just go to Meetup and get the link. So anyway, sorry about that. Sorry I put it so late. Okay, so let's get started. Does that sound good with everybody? Cool. All right, I'm going to share my screen. And let's share this. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Irma. Yeah, I think so too. Maybe that last minute posting helped us here, so we didn't get all the Zoom bombers in. Okay, so when I'm on this screen, I can't see the chat or anything, but when I come back, I will check the chat. Okay, because I can only see my screen as I do this, and if I try to do the split screen, my computer wigs out and has an aneurysm. So I'm just going to see my slides. Okay. So letting go and achieving success. I'll tell you a little bit about me very briefly. I have a BA in psychology. Please mute yourself if you have if it's not muted. I have a MS in cognitive neuroscience and MA in liberal arts. I'm finishing up both the theses now, so it's not official. My research has been taking forever to finish, but it's getting closer and closer by the day. If somebody's off mute, I can't see who it is. All right. Okay, I muted those people. So I've made a lot of programs, letting go program, which I'll tell you now at dillonfreed.com. That's free, the full program. You should do that. A lot of you have, I think 400 of you from the group have gone and done the program. Again, it's completely free. There's no credit card, anything like that. It's literally free, full program. You can go get it. That goes deep into letting go. I've made a program called True Psychology, Come to Know Your Dark Side, which is about the shadow, and many more. I own several businesses. And if you want to follow me on social media, there you go. I do most of my damage on TikTok. That's that's where I post the most. Chinese spyware probably has me, but whatever. Okay. The outline of this talk, I'm going to talk about the two types of success. What about my calling? And we're going to have two main methods we're going to talk about for success. One is letting go. That's the group, right? It's my main method. It's what I use every day. It's mainly what we talk about in this group. And then the method two is something, and this is kind of what I'm excited about, mainly to share with you, is something I call fields of feeling or field of feeling / the Butler, which is a little bit metaphysical. So I was a little unsure about whether to present it this way, but I have to present exactly how I do it, how I've used it to use these certain methods to achieve success. And then we'll have 33 more hints for success if time permits. So then conclusion and questions. So the first thing I want to talk about is real success and game success. This is something that I think I unintentionally discovered as an athlete when I was in high school playing basketball. And it's really, whenever I forget this distinction, life is not as much fun. So there's two types of success, and only one type of success is real. And the one type of success that's real is your spiritual, emotional, psychological, relational, relationship evolution. That's real success. That is the success that is is the success that counts in the end. And by the end, I mean at death. Right? So um, the cool thing about real success is
Hmm.
real. The cool thing about real success is that real success is something you get automatically. It's something that just by attempting to be a better person, just by attempting to be kinder, just by attempting to be loving, just by coming to meetings like this, right? You're already successful. You're already doing great. That's it. So everyone who is trying to improve their life in some way, to be kinder, more loving, to learn more, wiser, rise in consciousness, if you meditate, if you're doing that, in my opinion, you can relax. Your human life is already a success. And you really have to feel this, that this is what it's about, right? The small interactions you have every day, when you're smiling at the cashier, when you're being nice to the janitor, when those little things are real success. But then we also have game success. I call it game success because now everything else, the money we want to make, the businesses we want to start, the skills we have that we want to turn into possibly, a money making venture, this is all a game, and it's not that serious. Right. And the reason I said I discovered this as an athlete is, and there's another slide on this where I'll talk about it as well. But when I was an athlete, I would, before the game, I would recall something good I had done for somebody else before the game started, and I would remind myself that that's the real success. When I helped the old lady cross the street, what happens out here on the basketball court, I played mostly basketball, doesn't really matter. And this frees you up. This allows you to be fearless. This allows you to perform at your best. This allows you to get into like a zone or a flow type state more frequently. Now, it's not that we don't take the game seriously. We do, but it's like a wink, wink, nod, nod serious, right? So when we want to start a business, it's like we're going to take it seriously the same way when, you play a game. You might be highly competitive, but it's like if you were playing in an athletic event, highly competitive, and then somebody called and said your son, your daughter, your mom, your dad is sick, the game doesn't matter. Real life matters, right? Well, we know that when it comes to something severe, but we can also think, yeah, whether I scored 100 points in a basketball game, like Will Chamberlain or something, that doesn't matter compared to what I did today when I was helping. I saw somebody crying on the train. And I went and asked them, what's wrong? Like that's what matters. That's real success. So knowing that frees us up. And it helped me when I played sports. I could go out there and it was free. It's like, okay, I go 0 for 20 from the field in the basketball game. Who cares? Or I start a business and it fails and I go bankrupt. Who cares? It's the game. So we want to free ourselves up. So part of letting go is letting go of taking game success as real success. We don't want to treat the game as if it's the only real success. And a lot of people do the opposite. They treat real success as that's kind of bonus, that's extra, it doesn't really matter. So having this conception of these two types of success really can help you, that help you be more fearless, and kind of it makes life fun and humorous too. I've always said, like, and it's not just my idea, of course. A billionaire and a bum end up at the pearly gates, and really all that matters is the evolution of the spirit or the self. That's it. You're not going to get into heaven because you build an empire, if you were an a-hole, right? So real success, we might say, is storing treasures in heaven. So that kind of lays the groundwork for all of this, is that all that matters is real success. And that's how we treat each other, how we try to evolve. Um, game success is what we're here about today, right? So this is what you wanted to talk about, is when you say achieve success, we're thinking about game success. But I wanted to lay the groundwork for the understanding of game success. One way to be more successful in the game is to remember real success. So if you just want to feel successful, you're done. right? Like you should already feel it. You should feel real success. Now, some people say, okay, fine, we understand it's a game. We understand what real success is, but what about my bliss, my passion, my calling, my duty, my dharma? Don't I have a responsibility to also be somebody, be something in the world, right? I think there is something to that. I think essentially you have to also play the game, because through the game, in certain ways, we can also work on our real success. Playing sports, if any of you played sports, you learn the value of hard work, you learn the value of dedication, which translates eventually into what you're going to need to evolve emotionally and spiritually. Right? You know how to deal with ups and downs and so forth, because we're taking the game seriously, but it's kind of that wink, wink, nod, nod seriousness again, right? Some people say, what about the story of talents in the Bible? And if you don't know that story, there are three sons, and one son is given one coin, another son's given three coins, and then a third son's given 5 coins. And the father goes away and comes back after some years, and the two sons that had 3 coins and 5 coins essentially doubled the coins they were given. And the father loves them and hugs them and says, I gave you and they're called talents. These coins are called talents. I gave you 3 talents. I gave you 5 talents, and now you've made 6 and you've made 10. So the talents that God has given you, you've doubled. The son who had 1 talent, 1 coin, the father comes in, what have you done with the 1 coin I gave you? And this son says, well, I took the 1 coin and I went and buried it in the ground. So I didn't lose anything. And here's the 1 coin. And the father says, get out of my sight. You're no longer my son. So there is something about, we have these talents that we need to try to develop. But one of the mistakes I think we make is that when we're trying to develop these talents that we have, these skills that we have, we're um, we're too focused on the money aspect of it, right? Like I think it's in Christianity, it's called the gospel of prosperity. It, it's a false gospel, right? It's Jesus didn't teach you to be wealthy, right? In New Age circles, it's called abundance. I sometimes called abunding, right? That like if you think positive thoughts, you're going to be monetarily wealthy, right? So I think the mistake is we have these talents, we have these things we should use in the game. We should try to improve them, these skills and talents we have. But I think we make the mistake that necessarily means if I follow my bliss, I'm going to have abundance. I'm going to have tons of money. I can tell you that's not the case. And I know that's not the case. Plenty of people are super talented, tried, and just didn't make money doing it. So the idea is to develop your skills in the game. And I think C.S. Lewis made a really good point, because also developing your talents means coming back to the real success, your internal talents, right? Like your internal gifts. Maybe you're patient, maybe you're naturally kind. And I think he made a good point, because you know the saying that a rich man has a hard time getting to heaven like a camel through the eye of a needle. And he said, maybe you're kind of acting, if you just think you're a good person, maybe you were just born moral, you were born into the right family, in a good neighborhood, in a non-war torn country, right? So you were born rich in certain, you might say, like spiritual qualities or emotional qualities. And he's saying it's more than just being born rich in these qualities. You still have to work on those. So if you're kind, maybe you need to be more kind, or maybe you're a moral person, maybe you need more faith. So we can't assume just because we're a good person, we're just not a product of our environment, our upbringing, which is all great. It's a boon. We still are a rich person, and we think we're going to quote unquote get to heaven if we just sit on our spiritual laurels. Like I know a lot of, like my grandmother was excessively kind, right? She was just that way. Everybody said from the time she was a child, she was just excessively kind. But she was also trying to improve her faith, come to know God more, right? If she had just rested on being kind, it's kind of like, I think that what C.S. Lewis is saying is it's still hard to get to heaven. So, but regarding our talents as far as the game, what do we do? Do we write? Are we in real estate? Are we a doctor? Are we a lawyer? That type of success, I sometimes call do your best success, this game success. You have an obligation to play the game. And remember, sloth is a deadly sin as well, right? So we don't want to be slothful. I think one of the funnest things about game success is you get to find your calling, you get to find your duty, your dharma, and then you can go after it without any fear. And like I just said, the major mistake people make, and it drives me nuts every time I hear it, a bunch of pop spirituality that, like, hey, just follow your bliss and God's going to provide abundance for you. Not monetarily. In New York City, where I'm at, there's endless talented people who are following their bliss, and they're never going to make a dime or very little, right? So the abundance you get from following your bliss is the joy you get from following your bliss. That's the abundance. It's not necessarily the monetary reward. And also keep in mind, evil people also follow their bliss. You know, there are people in this world who love war and violence. So there's a, following bliss can't be taken as like a law. I know if you've ever been to like a bad place or an evil country, there are people who absolutely evil country in the sense that it's kind of run by evil people. There are people who follow their bliss, and presently and historically who love war and love violence. Right. So your bliss isn't always isn't always godly, but we should try to find our bliss and follow it, our passion, our calling, our duty, our dharma, and try to play the game at the highest level. Another thing, my friend was going to run a seminar on this because everybody was talking about, like finding your dream vocation. And she was going to run a seminar called Love the Job You Have, right? Or how to love the job you have. And that's really great advice too. So bliss can be found in anything you do. You can find happiness as an employee working, sweeping a street, right? I tell this story often, but I used to golf at this course in Florida, and there was this old guy who was a cart guy there. He'd clean your clubs and everything. And you'd go there, and this old guy was just so sweet and positive and like put his all into the job. And my brother and we commented on, like, you could tell he was like really high consciousness, and it was just a cart guy, right? And he found bliss in his job. He just did his job to the best of his ability. I used to have a dog walking company. Now, listen, I love dogs, but let me tell you something. When you walk dogs, right? When we first started the company, I was walking like 24 dogs a day, and it'd be 0 degrees and rainy and windy. And as much as you love dogs, walking that much is walking that much. You're going up a 5-flight building, you're coming back down. And at a certain point, like, I was doing my job, but I was doing it without any passion whatsoever. And then I decided that I would just do the dog walking as best as I could. Like, I would put my all into it on every walk. And you know what's funny? I started to look forward to it no matter what the weather was, right? And I got better with training the dogs and better at reading dogs' body language. And when I would show up, dogs are always happy when they see you, but they'd be really happy when they see me. Right? I would pass the owners on the street, when I was like later that night when they were out walking their dogs, and the dogs would like go berserk when they saw me, right? Because I had started to put a lot of effort into the dog walking, which was hard because it was physically tough. You know what's hard about dog walking, on a little aside, is you never get loose. So you're walking a lot, right? You're moving a lot, but you never actually are loose because you don't really sweat because you're walking slow. So you're doing all of this walking, and you're not like getting into a good like workout rhythm. So at night your legs just literally throb. So anyway, anybody who spent a lot of time on their feet like that. I used to do construction, and just briefly in the summers, I was never sore, but I was sweating. I was like, it was more like a workout. Anyways, just an aside on why dog walking was tough. Again, you should try to monetize your gift, but don't expect that you'll make money from it. Which, that's a big downer. Everybody wants to be a rock star and, to follow but again, the real boon of following your bliss in the game of life is the relationships you'll make, the joy you get from practicing and trying, right? And learning this is really important. Christ said, wear the world like a light garment. And if you take the game too seriously, you end up wearing it like a tight garment. So I'm always working with one-on-one people who are tight garmenters, right? Like, you talk to them and they're having nervous breakdowns, they're anxious, and they're wearing the world so tight. And what we do when we release is we get them to like change clothes essentially. You can stay in the game, but you got to wear a loose garment, right? Like the game has to be the loose garment on you. So I've seen too many people, they reach out to me and they're really in a bad place with they're having panic attacks, a lot of CEOs, right? Just breakdown. And every time it's the game success is all that matters to them. They've completely forgotten about real success. It's all game. It's the game. It's the game. It's the game. And whether they succeed or fail, if they're an athlete and they have a bad performance, they hate themselves, like truly hate themselves, despise themselves, right?
Oh,
So, oh, somebody's on mute. So, one insight that we have into why real success is actually real, we might look at near death experiences. Now, even if you don't believe that near death experiences are actually someone touching the metaphysical, if you think it's just the brain rebooting, like in neuroscience, most neuroscientists think near death experiences, you aren't actually touching the other side. It's just as the brain reboots, you have this hallucination of a near death experience, and it feels like you were having this experience while the brain was dead. And they also note that like the brain, even after death, stays active in some way for like 15 minutes. Anyways, there's been some studies on that. The whole point is, even if you don't believe near-death experiences are the real thing, I think they do teach us something about what's important in life because, you've just nearly died. And as you come back online, what happened, if you think of it that way, or if you think you go to the other side, every single positive near-death experience, some people have negative near-death experiences, but every single positive near-death experience, they always come back and they say, it didn't matter that I was an Eagle Scout. It didn't matter that I was a CEO. It didn't matter that I was a beauty queen or I made like $1 million or anything like that. They all say to a person that when I had my life review, what was presented to me was the time I saw somebody weeping, somebody hungry, and I went up and asked them if they were okay. Time when I only had $5 and I still gave that $5 away to somebody in worse shape than me. So in near death experiences, again, whether you think they're real or just brain activity, it seems to tell us what is most important. And it's screaming at us that real success is most important. And I've read endless near death experiences, and all the positive ones, they come back and they say, and they're changed after that. They're not as concerned about game success anymore at all. And they do also have a fearlessness of death. So you're free now. This is a superpower to have this distinction between real success and game success. You can go after your duty, your dharma, and just go for it, right? You do take the game seriously. I'm not saying you don't, but it's again that wink, wink, nod, nod, serious. Football players before they go out, they scream, "This is war," right? They're taking the game very seriously. But again, if their mother or something got sick, when they leave the game, it's not the important thing. But you trick yourself to play the game. It is funny. Soldiers don't run to the front line and yell, "Time for a football game," so it's kind of funny. Uh, just go back to basketball one more time. There was a famous basketball coach, a guy named Stan Kellner, and he wrote a book called Beyond the Absolute Limit. I actually used a lot of his stuff for one of my first companies called Basketball Brain. I made when I was in my early 20s, and Basketball Brain was a program to help players psychologically with the game. It's still running, it has a lot of users. But anyways, before basketball games, this coach was Stan was very wise. Funny story, his son at one point reached out to me. Stan Kellner had passed away. His son at one point reached out to me, and somehow we lost touch, but he had offered me all of Stan Kellner's books, his library, because he had found Basketball Brain, and I always talked about Stan. So kind of a neat story here. But I'd read his book in high school, Stan Kellner's book, Beyond the Absolute Limit. And he was a very successful coach. They won many state championships. And one of the things he used to do before every game is they'd go around the room and each player would mention a good deed they had done that day or that week. And what's funny is they would sometimes miss the entire warm up talking about the good deeds they had done. He said the team would sometimes start crying because they started to do more and more. They got addicted to doing good deeds. And the reason he did this was, one, he wanted them to be good young men, right? Like, to do good things. But he was really wise, and he knew that if his players remembered what was important in life, real success, then they could go out in the game and play bold and intense and free. So that's kind of what we're doing here, right? We are we are learning to remember real success. So now we can go out into the game and just go for it, because who gives a damn? If they win or lose the basketball game, does it really matter? So you're close to the zone here, right? Like you're getting really close to the zone by separating real success and game success, because you're combining a feeling of freedom and intensity. You're taking the game seriously and not seriously at the same time. So we're starting to get excited now for the game, because you can't really fail. You already have your real success secured. So now it's all about what can we do in the game. So method number one to start to do well in the game is letting go. Now, I'm going to go through this very quickly. Then I'll pause before we go to method number two, see if there are any questions. I'll go through this very quickly because all of my other talks, we go into this more deeply. And again, at dillonfree.com, you can get the full letting go program. It's 100% free. There's no credit cards, none of that craziness. It's absolutely free. So you can go deeper there, and every other talk we give will go more into letting go as well. So the way we start to play the game is we start to let go of negative emotions. I think this is one of the chief ways to have and start to gain success. You let go of emotions that are blocking you. The general idea is underneath consciousness are a bunch of negative emotions that are holding you back. Pardon me. And you can also say, as a bonus, as you let go of these negative emotions, you're also making progress in the real success realm. So keep that in mind. But the emotions that hold you back when it comes to success are doubt, past failure, fear of humiliation, fear of what if it won't work, wanting, desiring, inadequacy. So, how do you let go of these negative emotions that are just underneath consciousness? Well, each morning we wake up and that's what we do. We go into these emotions. And I'm going to paste a link later. I don't know if I think I sent it to everyone, of exactly how I let go of negative emotions each morning. It's a little crash course where I type it out. But we're doing this again very quickly today. And I'll give you an example of how we would let go of, let's say, a past failure, right? So typically what happens is you get excited about some goal. There's a goal you want to go after. And then so like you set your goals, you get really excited, then you wake up the next morning and maybe you feel like, who am I kidding? Every time I've tried before, I failed. I'm nobody. I suck. I can't do this. I'm too young. I'm too old. I don't have the skills. I'll waste my time. So you have these thoughts because you failed in the past, and you notice these thoughts aren't very empowering. Now, what most people do when they have these thoughts, if they don't quit and just say, I'm not even going to try, they try to start to change their thoughts. That's 99% of self-help and psychology, is these thoughts of, who the F am I kidding? I'm nobody. You would look in a mirror and essentially say, I'm somebody. Or you would think about your past failure and try to reframe it as a learning experience, right? Or you'd find some motivational talk. You'd listen to this motivational talk to try to like get over that feeling of failure, that feeling of, I can't do it. Well, I have kind of a counterintuitive approach, and this is what letting go is about. You actually don't feel enough failure regarding your past. You don't feel like you suck enough. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, by saying these things like, I'm nobody, I suck, I can't do this, you're blocking other emotions that are actually there. You're not going deep enough into the emotions that are underneath this doubt, right? So if you go into, you imagine, let's say you started a business and it just never worked. You never got customers. You spent all this time and you're humiliated, right? If you go into that humiliation, there is, I really am nobody. It's not just I'm nobody. It's like, no, I really suck. But it's not the thoughts. We're looking for the feelings that are there. Like, you really feel ashamed. You feel embarrassed. You feel like you're worthless, like you're scum, like you'll never achieve success again. Maybe it ruins your relationship. You've lost all of your confidence. What you want to do is let all of that emotion come up, and it comes in layers and it loops. And then you're mad at yourself, and then you're furious at the world. And then you want to like burn down the world. Or maybe you had a business partner who screwed you over, and you're like, if you go into the emotion, there's rage towards that person, and you want to like strangle that person, right? Like in the unconscious has it's very simple mechanism. It wants to eliminate threats or run away from the threats, or it'll play dead. So hopefully somebody else will come fight the fight for them, right? That's called like depression, or it'll summon aid. But the unconscious, essentially, there's so many emotions you're not dealing with. So we have to go into the negative emotions, the doubt. You feel like you doubt yourself, but you don't know the depths to which you doubt yourself. You feel like nothing. You feel terrible. you know, you don't think you can do anything. And then, you feel this you get it layers back and loops back to the rage at why didn't customers like my product? And then you're mad at the marketplace and the economy, all of this rage, and then you feel guilty. You're right. You feel guilty because you think, I'm a good person. Why am I so mad? Right. So then you go into guilt, and then you're back to shame. So underneath all of these thoughts, if you just try to change the thoughts, good luck. They're not powerful enough, right? The emotions are so much more powerful. Every time you have a thought, notice that right before that thought, there was a little emotion there. And that emotion's giving rise to thoughts. One negative emotional experience with a past business failure can give rise to thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts, right? So if you try to change your thoughts, good luck. It's not going to happen. You let go of the emotion, and then the thoughts start to change. And we kind of went through this, but the feelings are in layers, and they're in layers, and they'll loop. So you'll feel angry, and then you'll feel doubt, anger, doubt, anger, shame, doubt, anger, shame, doubt, anger. And what we do is we go through these emotions until they run out. And part of letting go is learning the emotion isn't unlimited. The emotion runs out. The emotions you feel, the negative emotions you feel, they do run out by going into the emotions, right? And then there's a bunch of other things that you learn in letting go. But essentially, the number one method to start to achieve success in the game is to start to let go of all of the BS, toxic emotions that are within us. And then as we do, our mind, our conscious mind, positive emotions start to emerge. And I've always, thought you get the 5 C's when you start to let go of these emotions. Because you let go of the negative emotions, you're able to concentrate, right? You're able to focus because you don't have this doubt and shame pressing on your consciousness. So when you make a plan for action, it's a better plan. When you're engaged in activity, you're more focused, you're closer to the zone. You start to feel more confident as you let go of doubt. As you let go of the shame of past failures, you start to laugh at yourself. You gain some humility, which is very close to confidence, by the way. This humility, it's weird, right? Being humble and confident, they're very close. The more humble you are, you start to laugh at yourself. You start to get more confidence because you'll also remember that it's just a game, and in this game, you can do whatever you need to do. You become more carefree. You don't care if you fail. You're just excited about potential success. You have more composure. The ups and downs don't get to you. You're sort of wise. You know that like it's not all going to be smooth sailing straight up, and you also become more consistent. You can work through challenges. Okay, so you get the 5 C's, and then after we release, we go back to our affirmations. We go back to our visualizations. We go back to um, writing down, a plan of action. And what we find is because those negative emotions are gone, our affirmations, our visualizations are supercharged. I just right before this talk, I had a meeting with somebody I'm working with. Said a really, if I told you his past, you would all cry. He's been like through hell, really like demonic stuff. But he's releasing, and he notices as he releases, as he lets go of the negativity, when he thinks of something, it starts to show up, and he's finding joy again, and he's starting to like trust that, oh, if I let go of this negativity, as I look in the mirror and I say something positive to myself, I'm starting to believe it actually. So I wanted to point out that letting go of negative emotion isn't anti-thought. It just puts thought as secondary, not primary, because it's not powerful enough to deal with emotions. Now, one thing I'm going to say before we get to main method number 2, and I'll pause for a moment before we go to main method number 2, is the main emotions we're going to let go of here when we're trying to get game success. It might be counterintuitive, but it's wanting and desiring. Letting go of wanting goals, letting go of desiring things. These are the things we're going to let go of. They are negative emotions. Stop and feel what it feels like when you want something, when you desire something. If you pay attention, it's actually not a good feeling. It's a weird feeling. It's not positive. You feel like you lack something. We're going to talk about this again shortly, but remember, this is probably the most important part of letting go when it comes to achieving game success. Is to let go of wanting and desiring your goals. And you're probably saying, how the hell can I achieve a goal if I don't want it? But we're going to talk about that. So we'll stop here and I'll take some questions if there are any. And the next thing, we're going to talk about the field of feelings, which is what I was really excited to talk to you about. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and we'll take questions and we'll go to main method number 2. Okay. So if there are questions, put it in. The Ted Lasso thing's very interesting. If there's any questions, throw it in chat right now. And if not, I'll just continue on. I had to mute because I muted everybody again. So I can allow to unmute yourselves as well now, if there's any questions. Oh, thanks for posting my link in the Mark. I appreciate that. Okay, oh, Nicole, hey, how's it going? I see your hand up.
Hey, Dillon, how are you? Good morning.
Nice to see you. How are you?
You. Thank you so much for having this again.
Of course.
Just really quickly, I did make progress in that letting go that I was doing over the my very long-term 15-year relationship ending. And so that ended up really well. I just wanted to tell you that so this morning was the first morning where I felt like I woke up and I did not wake up in anguish over that relationship. So I wanted to share that, but that's not my question. So my question is actually about where you were saying decide to do your best, like loving the job that you have. So that resonates with me. However, I work in a very competitive environment. Um, I work for the government. And so I'm wondering, how do you do this, focus on doing your best without those feelings of competitiveness taking you over? That's my
Great question. Great question. I'm like, have you ever seen Wedding Crashers, the movie?
Mhm.
You know, the football game where the guys are just a little too like the guys, like one of the dudes is like super competitive.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's me. So I completely I'm like one of those weirdos. I'm like hyper competitive. Um, I think what you do is you can use competitiveness. Like I'm a pragmatist, right? So I love letting go of negative emotion, but if you want to use a little negative emotion to like, you know, make it better, to make yourself better, to make the company better, I think there is something to that. Even the Tao Te Ching says, I think I actually have it in these slides. The Tao Te Ching says, seek out like the best enemy, right? Like seek out the best warrior to fight against, right? So the root, I heard this originally when I was like 16 from Tony Robbins, that and I never forgot it, is that the root of competition is to conspire together. So it's like the best against the best, and sometimes that means it's the best against the best on the same team. Like you have team members competing together. I think you can do it with joy rather than a snarl. So in my basketball brain program, what I talk about is like the difference between Kobe Bryant. Everybody knows Kobe Bryant, right? Kind of like a vicious competitor, known as a vicious competitor. And then you have somebody like Steph Curry. Everybody knows Steph Curry, I assume, who plays with joy. They both have the killer instinct, right? So I think you can kind of keep that killer instinct, but do it with joy rather than the snarl. Do it with the smile rather than grunting, right? And snapping on people. And it seems like most people like playing with Steph Curry better. And he's very successful. So Magic Johnson was kind of that way. You play with the smile rather than the Michael Jordan snarl. So that's how I would approach it. But that was one of the things I had a major problem with, because I was trying to, like, real success was very important to me, but that snarling Michael Jordan attitude worked very well for me, and I was very scared to give that up. In Beowulf, right? The story Beowulf, probably they made you read that in high school at some point. Well, Beowulf he's a warrior. That's his whole life. He's a warrior. That's what he does. And then you get these Christian impulses in the story. Later translators and transcriptors of the story started to add Christian elements into the Beowulf warrior narrative. And then you have this tension between Beowulf the warrior and Beowulf the Christian, right? So this isn't like what you're going through is very common. So my solution has been to do it with a smile rather than like, you know. It's still hard. The snarl can still come out, and then you just forgive yourself for being, getting too wrapped up in the game. So that's my advice: is try to do it with a smile, but keep your competitiveness. There's nothing wrong with it.
Thank you, Dillon.
Of course, competitiveness in a playful way. I'm glad you're doing better too. I'm glad you're doing better. Can you speak to or go over the process of letting go of emotions? I'll tell you what. I'm posting a link here, Gavin. Watch this short. I think everybody should watch this video. I don't know if you saw this, Nicole, but it goes into more of the typing, how I actually release every morning. Do the full program, because you need to understand the underpinnings of why we release negative emotion. And then I actually put this video in the program, so you'll see this video in the program too. But if you want like a very very quick crash course on how to let go, watch that video. Okay, cool. Do you want me to continue on? Is everybody any more questions? Cool. I'll continue on. So this is the first time I've ever shared this material that I'm about to present. And I was a little like leery, should I share this? Because I don't want to get too much into the metaphysical, but it is what I use and how I do it. So I thought, you know what the heck? I'll show you exactly what I do. So after I release, this is my method for achieving game success. I think I need a marketer, because I don't know if game success is like the best the best phrase, but I think you all know what I mean. So the main method number 2, after I release negative emotion, I essentially shift into excitement. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about feelings, and after I release negative feelings, I enter what I call the field of feelings. And let's get a little bit deep here, okay? Have you ever actually thought about where feelings come from? Now, I teach neuroscience in college. I basically teach neuroscience 101. And I start the semester off by teaching how the neuron fires. And essentially how a neuron fires is you have a neuron, it has a cell membrane, which is just fat, okay? It's just fat. And in this fatty cell membrane, everybody's seen an axon, right? It has a little tail and dendrites up here. It kind of looks like a radish or something, right? Anyways, you have this fatty cell membrane, and in the membrane are proteins. And these proteins are just amino acids, and amino acids are just atoms. Okay, so you have these proteins which are bundled together, and they're little pores. So you have this fat, and there are little pores that you can go into and out of the atom. So things can flow into and out of the neuron, not the atom. Atoms can flow into and out of the neuron. Ions, we call them. Ions are just charged particles. Sodium, potassium, like you've heard of these sodium and potassium, right? So sodium and potassium are flowing in and out of the neuron. So you have atoms going in and out of a fatty cell membrane, going through these protein channels, little holes in the neuron. And if the balance of ions shifts to a certain point, you get an action potential. You get a jolt of electricity. The electricity flows down the neuron to the end of the neuron. You've heard of the synapse, right? Down the neuron to the synapse. When the voltage gets there, it changes. It opens more of these protein channels. The protein channels are like this, and then they open, right? They're like closed, they open. Calcium comes in. When calcium comes in, I'm giving you a neuroscience lesson, but there's a point to this. Calcium comes in. These bags of neurotransmitters go to the synapse, open up, and spray out neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters, what are they? They're just chemicals. Okay, so where in this would feeling be? Do neurotransmitters contain feelings? How from ions going in and out, charged particles going in and out of a neuron, to electricity to chemicals, where do we find feeling? Now, you would say, okay, well, these neurons are all linked together and they're encoding, they're creating a self, right? And they create the self, a sense of self, like it's there's somehow encoding your body, and then this neurotransmitter dopamine, for some reason, activates certain regions that make you feel good. Okay, so we have the pleasure pathway, and we activate the pleasure pathway, people feel good. But we have to go back to the basic neuron. Where would the pleasure come from? How do you find the subjectivity of pleasure? And neuroscientists and philosophers call it qualia. Where does that come from? The subjective experience of pleasure. This is like a major problem, and I don't think we're making any progress on it, really. Now, there are some clever potential solutions to this, how you can maintain physicalism, how you can maintain the idea that there's only a physical world and get feelings, but it seems very hard to do. Some people think it's like quantum, and what feels good is like the quantum state is like collapsing a wave function, and that's what gives us a feeling of pleasure. But you see there, you're already kind of moving towards this idea that I'm playing with, and that is that emotions essentially are sort of metaphysical, independent of the brain, maybe. Now, this puts me in like the smallest minority of minorities in neuroscience. Okay, no self-respecting neuroscientists or physicists would think this has any weight. It's just they would say I'm arguing from ignorance. That I'm arguing from ignorance. But I think actually there's good reason to believe that feeling may be the essence of reality, at least a part of the essence of reality, the essence of what exists. Like if every atom, if every fundamental particle disappeared, if all the fields that we consider as the essence of the universe, if all of those disappeared, what would remain would be this field of bliss, this field of positivity, a field of feeling. And it's while scientists would reject this, no mystic would essentially reject this idea because they've experienced it. They've experienced the essence of divinity. Now, I admit using the word feeling isn't exactly right, but I think it works well enough. We're actually talking about the quintessence, the essence of divinity. Quintessence, by the way, is a cool word. I've always liked the word quintessence because you have the four elements. Quintessence means the fifth element. The fifth element would be this consciousness, this field of feeling, as I'm calling it. And mystics have words for it. They call it Sat Chit Ananda, which is like Sat is, if I remember correctly, truth. Chit is consciousness, and then Ananda is bliss. So when I say the field of feeling, I'm just kind of renaming Ananda, right? This blissful feeling. So the way I kind of look at the brain, though I admit there are ways to get feeling, I think there are ways to get feelings just from physical activity and neural encoding. I still think the highest level, there is this kind of bliss state that permeates everything. I say that from reading the mystics, but also having experiences daily with this field. So it's a part, it started off as belief in what the mystics were saying about awareness and the field, and then actually having those experiences myself. So the field of feeling, when I say that, just think I'm talking about Ananda, right? Or something like that. So here's the crazy thing. I wish I had it. I was on my phone, but I was saying earlier, as you let go of negative emotion, you start to embrace, we'll talk about this field of feeling. You start to think of things. And I was thinking about, giving this talk on Ananda today. It's my first time. Yesterday, as I was walking, I passed a restaurant called Ananda, right? And I was like, oh, that's a sign. I should talk about this. And then I met through a friend, another person who I ended up getting along with very well. And her name is Ananda. Crazy, right? So you start to get these synchronicities, which gave me, I don't really like, I don't like talking about the metaphysical too much, but I kept getting these signs that I should talk about this. So Ananda showing up all around me. um, Now, if you're someone who doesn't believe in any of this crap, and trust me, I have friends like that. Most of my neuroscience friends are like, nope, don't. It's all brain based. That's all it is. There's nothing else. I understand that. And if I put on my science hat, I can get into that space too. I can see the universe as a closed system, and we mostly know what's in it, given the standard model, et cetera, et cetera. But what I suggest to them, and if you're somebody who doesn't believe in like the metaphysics of this, is try to think of it as like psychologically useful to think this way. It's like a little mental trick you're going to play on yourself to get more out of yourself, to help you achieve more. It's just like a psychological tool. You may have done this anyways, like you act as if you're already a great speaker before you become a great speaker. You act as if you're a great leader before you become a great leader. So you can kind of put it in that category where I don't really believe in the field of feelings as this ananda that mystics talk about. I think it's all brain-based activity, but it's a useful belief. It's a useful illusion that you can engage in, if that makes sense. Okay, so I totally understand, and I have a lot of respect for atheists, people who aren't metaphysical. I've always said you have home court advantage. We are in the material universe, so your arguments can be very compelling. And I love some of my favorite times of my life is to have long discussions about whether God exists or not. And I'd like to credit myself to be able to I can take both sides of that argument if I need to. Now, beyond all arguments, I've had experience with this field of feeling, this ananda. So my belief, you might say, in God and divinity transcends any arguments, right? So what is the field of feeling more specifically? Okay, so the field of feeling I've kind of described transcends time and space. If everything that we know of as creation disappeared, this would be the root of creation. This would be the base of it. This is the uncreated thing, right? The idea of the metaphysical, like a metaphysical deity, entity, whatever, is that it is uncreated. If you say who created God, essentially you're asking a question that would, from a theological perspective, make no sense, right? So you can't say who created God, because if God is created, that wouldn't be God. And of course, if this pushed back, it says, well, then you have infinite regression and so on and so. We won't get into those debates, but you can subjectively experience this field of feeling that is timeless, spaceless, unborn, undying, the essence of creation, right? So that's what we're going to get in touch with today to help achieve our goals on this on this marble floating through space. But the field is bliss, but it's like variations and gradations of bliss. And bliss can, at a certain, you might say, at a certain orientation, is love. I kind of think about it like, if you have a shower head, it's all water coming out, but you can kind of change the pattern, change the pressure, change the shape, but it's still water, right? So the field of feeling, it's the same essence, it's just slightly different patterns, right? So the field has love, it has boldness, it has peace, it has power, has excitement. Okay, and excitement is our connecting link, you might say, to the field. The way we're going to connect to this field is with excitement. And one thing we'll talk about here, we're going to go through a 5-step process to actually use this. The field is eager to help you. It's not, it's actually waiting for you. It's weird because, like, to show your faith in the field is to use the field to help you. So the field is saying, show your faith in me by, show you believe in me by using me to help you. Okay? It's waiting on you to call upon it, which is a kind of crazy thing when you start to realize this. So the field of feeling is all good. There's no negativity in the field. Its essence is happiness. The problem of evil, where does evil come from? It's essentially a diminution of this field. It's there's only the field, but there's less of the field in evil. I could give a long talk on that, and we talk about this a little bit more in the when we do letting go in the dark side. But again, the way we align, connect, communicate with this field is one emotion: excitement. Excitement. Excitement is the emotion where we start to kind of feel giddy about our future. We feel excitement, and then we picture the excitement. So when we'll talk about this, when I quote unquote connect to this field of feeling, this ananda, this metaphysical state, I feel the excitement and I picture it. So I'll picture myself on the top of the mountain, but I also picture the excitement of preparing for the trip, and I picture the excitement of actually climbing up the mountain. So you want to see the end and you want to see the process, right? You want to feel excited about the process and excited about the summit, if you will. Another thing you start to realize as you go to this field of feeling is that everything you want already exists. Everything. And it's kind of a crazy realization that you, in whatever image you think of yourself, already exists in some way. If the metaphysical is omniscient, it must know all possible combinations and permutations of every entity on Earth. So you can think about it like you want to be a great singer, you want to achieve start some business, that goal already exists, that world already exists. It's like this huge Amazon warehouse, and it's all there. And the way you start to order, so to speak, what you want from this warehouse is via excitement. And some people say, well, if God knows everything, just a quick sidebar here, if God knows everything, how can we have free will? And I think one of the ways to think about this is, because it will come up as you start to consider the nature of this metaphysical entity, and as you connect to this field of feelings, this question will come up: is like, well, if God already knows everything, how come is everything predestined? And I've always thought about it as like God is a calculator, and God is a calculator in the sense that if you pick up a calculator and you put 9 times 9 in, the answer is already there, right? 81. It's already stored in the calculator, so to speak. So in that sense, the calculator doesn't know what you're going to enter into it, but it doesn't matter, because the calculator knows all possible combinations that you can enter, right? 9 times 9, 9 times 9 times 9, right? Now we're talking about a physical calculator, but if you imagine God as like the celestial calculator, so to speak, he doesn't need to know what you will specifically pick. You could almost say that would be extraneous and therefore make him imperfect, right? So the way I think about it is, no matter what you choose, God knows every route that you could possibly choose. So does he need to know the specific route you choose? I don't think so, because every route exists for him simultaneously as a reality. That's just a quick sidebar, because as you let go of negativity and as you start to embrace the field of feelings, you'll go, where's my free will in this? Now, I do think God pushes you in certain directions, maybe has certain paths he favors. You could say that. He's not a perfect calculator. As your hand goes to type in the God calculator, maybe he tries to nudge your fingers a certain way before you put an input, if you get what I'm saying. And that's what we call, that's what we call guidance. That's what we call, in spiritual terminology, we call it the Holy Spirit, our guardian angels. Another way to look at Ananda, and we're going to talk about this field of feeling, is it really is the Holy Spirit, because that wanting to help you aspect, in spiritual terminology, you could say it's kind of like the Holy Spirit, right? And again, if you're not somebody who believes in any of this, you can just kind of think about it as a useful tool. So step one to start to connect to this field of feeling is you make an exciting list. And remember how I said we don't want and we don't desire? We're going to talk about this in a second, but I'll bring it up here. We don't want, don't desire. How do you achieve your goals? You get excited. That's it. You just become excited. And excitement, notice, is different than wanting, right? Wanting usually follows excitement, but it doesn't have to. You can just be excited. Now, I'm sure some of you are parents, or some of you are grandparents. What do you do when you see your grandson or your little kid maybe get excited about a toy? You make a mental note, and they don't have to say, I want that toy. They don't have to desire that toy. And sometimes kids just are excited by the toy, right? It's implied that they want it by the excitement. So you can let go of wanting and desiring and just feel pure excitement. And this excitement signals the Butler. So sometimes I call this field of feeling the butler, because the butler wants to help you. It wants to wait on you hand and foot. Okay. So I make a list of the things that excite me. So that's step one. What excites you? Think about your body, your health, right? What world you want to enter into. So you think about your relationship. You feel excited about meeting someone. You feel excited about the relationship you're in. You feel excited about being in shape. You feel excited about your businesses. So I'm starting this company, this virtual reality company, and I can picture it's actually VR, virtual reality hardware. I can picture the warehouse where we're going to build this. Right? I can see it. I get excited about it, and that's it. I just feel excitement. I picture the excitement. I see our team working on it, and then I see the end product. And then step two is I always remind myself of the scale of the field of feelings, the power of the field of feelings. Have you ever seen those videos where it's like it starts in New York City and it starts to zoom out and it's like America, and then it's like the globe, and then it's the solar system, then the galaxy, and you just feel like really small. But there's another way to look at that too, is like that field is everywhere. And think how small Earth is in that field. It's overwhelmingly powerful to bring about what you want to bring about. So as you give excitement to the field, you get excited, you're telling the field, this is what would excite me. You're not saying this is what I want, you're saying this is what would excite me. And the field is so powerful. I always do that. I always think about the scale, the size. And this isn't exactly right, because like the field is, it doesn't really have a form or anything, but I want to feel the power of the field. And the human mind loves, it understands scale that way. It starts to help the human mind understand the power and potency of the field. Step three, again, after I make the list, then I really start to feel and see the excitement. So I make the list, I think of the scale, and that's when I start to visualize and feel the excitement. And it feels like I'm placing an order on Amazon. You start to trust this field so much. I talk about this in a moment, but you no longer hope things show up in your life, you expect them. For instance, right now, hope that you'll achieve some goal and then expect that you'll achieve some goal. It's two different feelings. So you start to expect that the field works for you, especially after you let go of negative emotion. So again, surrender wanting and replace it with excitement. Sometimes I call it the ES method: excite and surrender. I used to call it the IS method: intend and surrender. But having an intention, I found it feeling excitement is more feeling excitement for something is more powerful. Step four is as I'm feeling the excitement, I remind myself that this Holy Spirit thing is a butler. And when I first started calling it the butler, it was like the field has a sense of humor and started laughing a little bit. It metaphysically cracked up in a way, right? It enjoys laughter and cheer and a joke. And people don't think about God that way, but there's humor in divinity. Like the essence of creation is kind of humorous. It's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. when they ask what's the meaning of life, if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, you should. What's the meaning of life? And they build this big computer to find the meaning of life, and they finally have this big event. The computer's finally found the meaning of life, and the computer says 42. There's a metaphysical aspect to this that cracks up. And just on this butler idea, now this is the Holy Spirit, this butler, and it's not a genie, right? The difference between a genie and a butler is a genie, you get limited wishes. The butler is there to serve you his entire life, right? Like a good butler. But this butler is also mostly concerned with your real success. He'll help you with the game success, this field of feelings, but he's concerned with your real success. It's like Alfred was to Bruce Wayne to Batman. Alfred's real concern, he'd help him in any way, but his real concern was the type of person he'd become. So when you ask this butler for help, it's going to help you, but it's also going to its main concern is that you achieve real success. So if it doesn't give you something in the game, you assume it doesn't give you that in the game because it would not help you with real success. And then the last step here, and then I'll stop, though there's more slides. I think it's a good place to stop, is remind yourself that the butler, the field of feelings, Ananda, never runs out. It never gets tired. It never gets sick of helping you. That's actually a nice help king. It's a help king. My typo is inadvertently useful. It's a helping king. So the human mind by necessity via evolution, right? Like we're always in a scarce world. We can run out of food. We don't really understand what infinite is. We don't, and that's why I like to blow up the scale of this field of feeling by imagining the universe, right? And how powerful this field is. But you can use this field of feeling, this field of giving over and over again. It never runs out. I always go back to the Tao Te Ching, which says the Tao is like a well, used but never used up. It is like the eternal void filled with infinite possibilities. We don't understand infinite. It never gets tired helping you. Later in the Tao, it says the Tao is called the Great Mother, empty yet inexhaustible. It gives birth to infinite worlds. It is always present within you. You can use it in any way you want. So I think the word worlds here, I'll end with this. In my, we did a goal setting workshop, right? I think it was on New Year's Day this year or December 31st, right before New Year's Day. And the word goal essentially means limit or boundary, right? It's a limit or boundary. So when you set your goals, like you see yourself as being like somebody who has a really fit body, you're crossing into a new world. You're crossing a boundary. You're crossing a limit. So I love the idea of worlds. I feel excited about new worlds that I'm going to enter into. So when I feel excited, my goals are worlds. The world where I'm in better shape, the world where I own this VR company, the world where my book's published, right? I get excited about going on these worlds. The same way you get excited about a vacation to some tropical place, right? You think of the place and you just feel excitement. You feel excitement about it. Notice when you first get excited about going somewhere, the feeling of wanting comes after. It's that excitement. That excitement is very pure and a very positive feeling. So I'll end there, and we won't get to the 33 more hints for success because that's overdoing it. But okay, stop sharing. And here we are. Okay, so let's do some questions. And I muted everybody again because some were coming unmuted. Everybody's unmuted or can unmute. Okay, so I saw a question. What if the game is rigged? For example, late stage capitalism creates dynamics where people have become products. The value of being a person is entirely summed up by what you consume. It becomes people's identity. Data brokers, it's parasitic. You can see this in pharmaceutical companies, food industry. It creates an environment of toxicity. Well, we won't get into the idea of, I don't want to get into a political discussion, but the game is the game, right? And this is another reason, like maybe you see it as a game. Maybe it's not fair. We can still try in the game because real success is all that matters. Okay. You could make the case that late stage capitalism is early stage hyperabundance, right? Like maybe that's happening too with the advent of AI. Maybe AI ruins our world. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future, but we can still play the game. And part of some people's game is fighting against the rig system, right? So they go into the game and their game is let's fix the system. Let's make the system more fair, right? Now we have to be careful there. You can get into some really bad economic systems, but I do think that's a good question. But yeah, maybe your game is you're going to try to fix a system you don't like. And if that's the case, then you do it as best you can. And maybe you succeed, maybe you don't. And if you don't, who cares? Because as long as you were kind and loving as you went about your business, you still have real success. Great question. We could have a very long discussion about that, by the way. Competitiveness, but in a playful way, uplifting yourself and others. Oh, I think this is from Nicole's comment. Yeah, I completely agree. Yep, I agree with that. Hey, you're a smart guy, but here's some advice for collecting facts. Metaphysics does not achieve anything. I don't know what that means, to be honest with you. Metaphysics is a legitimate field of philosophical endeavor. And like I said, you can reject it. And if you want to reject that, there's no reason, like I said, you can approach it like you're acting as if in a psychological manner to use it. And if you don't want to do that, guess what? You don't have to. It's just advice. It's just advice. So is it like we are energetic beings and by raising our vibration, by getting excited, we attract what we want, desire from the universe? Okay, so I understand the essence of that question. I don't like the way pop spirituality talks about it because I think a lot of pop spirituality, quite frankly, is people who've read other things and then start regurgitating. Like a lot of teachers regurgitate things they've heard from other teachers. And I don't know if they've actually experienced what they talked about. The reason I waited 20 years, before I started making programs was I wanted to make sure whatever I talked about, I had at least experience. So I could talk from a certain authenticity about it. So I wouldn't call it raising our vibration. I would say we get excited and we kind of become this essence. And instead of attraction, it's more like a better word would be, I would say, I want to say manifestation, right? It's not like you get excited and you're pulling things toward you. It's more like you become excited and what is needed kind of appears. Attraction, as an analogy, I guess it's not terrible, but it's the way it feels when it happens. It doesn't feel like you're pulling it to you, if that makes sense. That's why I'm pushing back against it. Okay, that's why I'm pushing back against the attraction thing. And I also think it's kind of been used in the wrong way because here's the thing: they call it the law of attraction, and quite frankly, it's not a law. You can, and a lot of people thought, oh, I'm just going to attract this this dream life and abundance into my life. The Butler is mostly concerned with your real success. That's it. So you can try to attract $1 million into your life. That might not be good for you. So the Butler, Ananda, the field of feelings, does not does not does not care as much about game success as real success. So the law of attraction is not a law. You could say it's a tendency to get excited, and what you get excited about comes in. That's an awful idea. Don't do VR, please. It will create a bad world. Well, it's still you're not going to enter into the matrix. I'm not trying to create that, but we might already be in the matrix. Love the idea of worlds versus goals. Cool. Um, let's see. Will you be sending the presentation? Yeah, I'll send out the recording and the presentation deck as well. And I'll try, you know what, I'll add on to it. I'll go through the other slides I have at some point. So my ability to feel emotions decreases as I experience tiredness, hunger, loneliness, putting me in a lower level of consciousness as fatigue, accumulated negative emotions too kick in. Is it possible to stay in a more higher level of consciousness all day? Yes, it's definitely possible. But if you were around the clock in a state of bliss, you'd be a mystic, you'd be a saint, you'd be a sage, right? So be a little more easy on yourself and maybe aim for 90% happiness, right? 90% of the time you're happy, 95% of the time you're happy. And then hope, through some way you become 100% happy all the time. But releasing negative emotions and then connecting to what I call the field of feeling, you're going to go through life. I almost called my program Float because you end up kind of floating through life. It's like everybody else, you look around, everybody feels like this, like weighed down by gravity, right? Like everybody's like squished by life. And then you're going through life and you feel like you're kind of just floating like 2 inches above the ground, right? And gravity doesn't affect you as much. And that's because you know how to deal with emotion. When you couple letting go of the negative with excitement of this blissful Ananda field, right? Life just becomes wonderful. Because here's the thing, just trying to connect to this field of feeling is a way to achieve real success. So no matter where I'm at in the world, I was just traveling for a very long time, and I went to, I went to a place that was not in a good place, let's say, and it was a country at war, and the field of feeling is there too, right? So you feel that bliss no matter where you're at, and sometimes you have to control it in inappropriate circumstances. Right? Like you can't be smiling when you visit certain places, but you still feel it. I said, so excitement instead of hope is good, but expectation instead of hope is what I said. So right now, everybody can, this was something one of my old teachers taught me, is like right now, hope that you achieve the body of your dreams. And now expect that you achieve the body of your dreams. Do you see that subtle shift there? That subtle shift when you expect, there's a little bit of confidence, but you might notice when you expect, repressed emotion comes up and you go, oh, who the hell am I kidding? I can't do that. The doubt comes up or whatever. So you'll find that negative emotion like spring up. That's why we let go of negative emotion, because we say something positive. We do this thought exercise and we're like, yeah, I feel when I expect, I feel powerful. And then the unconscious mind goes, hold on, here's some negative emotion to make you doubt the positivity, right? So we have to let go of the negative in the unconscious. I will say here, everything I talk about is beyond the scope of what you would call traditional psychotherapy. And it definitely is not, these aren't things that as of yet, I'm really trying to make my future research, at least part of it, is going to try to bring letting go of negative emotions more mainstream, because I have some ideas about what's going on in the brain when this is happening. But right now, it's still outside the mainstream. I'm really trying to make it mainstream because I've seen it work with far too many people. Does it work for everybody? Maybe not. But I'd say 99.9% of the people I've worked with, it works for. I could actually say 100%. I'm only saying maybe not 100% because I haven't heard from people it doesn't work for, but I assume they're out there. Okay, let's see if there's, and you can, if anybody wants to unmute themselves, they can too. So make sure I get the next one. You're welcome, Alexander, of course. And I try to do all of this for free. I wanted to run this by the group. We've had some meetings where I had 600-700 people. Right now we have 50 people. I was thinking if everybody gave $10, if they could afford it, only if you could afford it, we could donate that to a charity. I was thinking like, St. Jude's or maybe Doctors Without Borders. Maybe we could vote on it. But maybe going forward, if we have big groups, because, one group I had I think we had 700 people in the Zoom, which was awesome. I thought, man, if everybody gave $10, we could donate $7,000 to somebody, So maybe that's something we could talk about in the future. And obviously I would give proof that it was donated and like all of that. I'd make it completely transparent in public. So there would be no doubt that that it didn't go to the right place. The steps would be fully feel emotions. Every time a new chat comes in, it jumps. That's why it's kind of hard, which is fine, but it just takes me a second. Okay, there we go. The steps would be to fully feel emotions, then release them by the method that you've shared on your site. Then reframe your existence relating to bliss and excitement. Yeah, that's pretty much it. 100%. That's what I do. Letting go of negative emotion. And then it's like, listen, when you let go of a negative emotion, especially when you first start, the negative feelings can kind of linger because there's so much there. There's so much negativity you're going through. After you get done with a releasing session, you might still feel a little bit negative. It's totally normal when you first start. You keep going into that, but you got to go to work, right? So those negative feelings might still be there, but we can come back to releasing later, connecting to this field of feeling, this field of bliss. It's kind of like a palate cleanser in a way. And it's just like you remember the fundamental truth of the nature of reality. And again, I'm saying that based on not science, but like more mysticism and personal experience. Physicists, neuroscientists, generally speaking, are going to reject this field of feeling. Just keep that in mind. I don't want to give the impression, because sometimes people know they know I have a degree in neuroscience. I'm going for a PhD, that like what I'm saying is like somehow aligned with the neuroscience field. And quite frankly, there are people who think this way, but they're in such a minority. So I don't want to misrepresent the neuroscience field. They believe in physicalism by and large, that it's neurons firing, it's neuronal encoding, and that's what gives rise to all of our experience. And they can make a good case for that. I've found that I don't believe in that personally. But when I do my research, I act as if that's the case, right? You have to. It's the only way you can do research, neuroscience research. You have to pretend it's physicalism. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, we should do a meetup where we all talk about our metaphysical experiences. The best way out is always through. Great quote, Mark. When I talk about letting go, there's this. I think some of you have heard it before, but there's a book by Joseph Conrad called Typhoon. And I'm taking the quote out of context, but the spirit of the quote is dead on. And it's the idea that if there's a storm on the horizon, going through it is the only way to handle it. Most people run away. Most people try to sail around. Most people look at the storm and they say, well, I'm going to reframe the storm as like, it's eventually good for the environment. We're going to think about why it started, the butterfly effect and how it came about. And that's why there's a tornado. My method, and that's what I always used to do. And you can feel pretty good doing that, right? Like you reframe things. But I just got to the point where it's like, yeah, I could for maybe 10 minutes get a positive thought and hold that positive feeling. But the thoughts were weak compared. Then I just said, F it, into the storm. And when you go into the storm, you go on the ship's going to get smashed, right? You're going to be floating in the storm, getting tossed by the waves. just pummeled by the waves. That's what releasing is. And as you're doing this, as you're getting pummeled by the waves, you're smiling or you're staying calm. Okay. I just had I was saying I had a talk right before this. And does everybody kind of know the story of Buddha? Buddha at the end, right before he achieved full enlightenment, he's attacked by demons, by Mara, all these forms of demons. And I really love this. At a certain, if there's artwork where he's attacked by demons, when I write my letting go book, finish it up, it's almost done. The cover is going to be Buddha attacked by demons, because when you go into negative emotion, especially if you've had a traumatic experience, it feels like you're attacked by demons. And at the end, what Buddha does to show that he's defeated these demons is he touches the earth. And when he touches the earth, and I guess this is the main point of letting go, he's showing that he's conquered earth. So when you can deal with emotions, you've effectively conquered earth, because there's nothing that you can't handle, because everything we experience is just emotion. Death is emotion, sickness is emotion, right? It's the emotions we're going to feel. What we are scared of is the emotions we'll experience in a certain thing. If we're scared of a breakup, we're not actually scared of the person not being near us. We're scared of our own emotions that are going to arise when somebody leaves us. It's the emotions we have to deal with, that we have to face. So I love that quote. And yes, the best way out is always through. And you go through, and then you let it ragdoll you. You let it beat you up. Atika. Can you hear me? Oh, can you not unmute? Oh, okay. Maybe that's on my end. Let me see.
No,
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I fixed it.
No,
I thought I hit the unmute. Okay.
Thanks. So bear with me if my thoughts come out incoherently, because I'm so excited about all of this. I feel like I've been just contemplating all of this for a very long time. I'm currently a student in psychology and like neuroscience, and
Cool.
actually also practicing Ramadan this month. And one of my goals for it is to reach that like spiritual bliss that you feel as a child. It's so connected with just being like morally good and just peacefully like loving everyone and everything around you. And I just have been like trying to find doses of that in my adult life now. So this is like so resonating with everything that I've been contemplating recently. And when you bring up the metaphysical and how this is almost like untouched territory in current modern psychology, right. I've always thought that maybe the piece that's missing is like the metaphysical, but analogous to like the heart and the soul. Because I feel like in modern psychology, we focus so much on the brain, right. But what part of, I feel like, the heart is just this muscle that isn't similar to the brain, but what if that metaphysical aspect is like the heart and the soul? And honestly, I'm so excited to like learn about that and see if there's something there.
For sure.
Like specifically the heart and soul, is that relating to your ideas of the metaphysical things?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I've had some heated debates with I've had some heated debates with my professors, good natured, but heated. And yes, I think exploring spirituality and its effects on the body. So one part of me says it's metaphysical, right? And if it's metaphysical, that means, well, it's beyond physics. And if it's beyond physics, then you can't really test it. But you could test the effects of spirituality. Like from a psychological, positive psychology started to sort of do that, maybe. Like the guy who founded positive psychology is Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman was the discoverer of learned helplessness. Like if a dog keeps getting shocked when it goes to get food, you give it food, it still won't go get the food because it's just learned that nothing works, right? But then he developed positive psychology. And one of the things he said, he's like, I used to kind of make fun of people who had like pictures of puppies and stuff all over their house. He's like, but that actually works. You can see a physiological change in their body when they do that. So I think absolutely trying to tie in the importance of the metaphysical into psychology, back into psychology. My argument with my neuroscience professors always was like, you're a materialist. You don't think there's a God. You don't think there's a soul. You don't. That's fine. It's your prerogative. The problem is we can make the case that this is still psychologically unhealthy. And for you to promote the physicalism, I think it's not healthy for most people in the world, because it's like 96% of people believe in God or something. Last time I checked, like a lot of people believe in God in some form. And I know when I've worked with people who have had their kids die or they've lost a family member to cancer, the only thing that keeps them semi-sane is their belief in the metaphysical, the heart, the belief in the soul, right? So you'll probably, if you do that research, you'll be looking for the effects of belief in that. And then you can, like, so there's the idea, like there's the actual heart, but then there's the heart chakra, right? If you go like more Eastern. So it's more like an energy field. And I'm of the mind that maybe that's just beyond the scope of science, right? Like it's beyond, I don't know if you could get that in a test tube, so to speak. But I love where you're going. And I think we need more people in science. We need more people in psychology that defend spiritual beliefs. I really think that, because and the neuroscientists that I talk to, and some are very well known, they do bad philosophy. Like they make claims that they can't support. They make them as if they're definitive claims. Like one just very, very briefly, there's this idea in psychology that consciousness, the sense of, it's just an illusion and it's essentially a simulation. One man says consciousness can't exist in reality, in physics. It can only exist in a simulation. And the simulation is the brain essentially creating a matrix in your own head. And we only think we're conscious, but we're really not. It's all fake. This is a very serious and growing view in neuroscience, right? So, okay, maybe that's a possibility. We put on our science hats. We see how they can come up with this. But that's a really scary thought, right? So everybody that you've ever known who's ever died means nothing. It's just been like this fake simulation. And I tell them, like, that's psychologically dangerous for a lot of people if this was widely adopted. And it can have societal impacts too, right? Because if people are just, it's like the old Soviet thing, or, where people are just cogs in a machine. And if you don't fit in the Soviet machine, they just canceled you. Cancel in the sense that, like, kill you, right? And it's happened. So, like, saying people are just meat machines, which is what one of my professors calls humans, meat machines. Well, who cares? Put meat. You put meat machines in a grinder. You don't really care if people die. So there's a danger there too, politically. So I applaud you going for that. I really do. That's awesome.
Thanks. I would love to continue this conversation if we can sometime. It's like so exciting to me. It makes me want to cry.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And everybody I do, I get a lot of emails and I do respond. The reason it takes me so long to respond is I usually write back a lot, but anybody can email me there. Thank you. Great question. I mean, we're on the same team because I'm fighting this fight, but you got to put on your science hat, and you have to be fair to the materialists and the physicalists because they do have some good arguments. You got to take them seriously. You need to get in there. And if you're a person of faith, get ready to have your faith challenged. If you believe in the soul, if you're going to go into this world, it's going to challenge some of your deeply held beliefs, because you'll start to see, like, oh, maybe there's a way to have consciousness without it being metaphysical, right? So just keep that in mind. It can be like, it's a little dangerous spiritually to go there, personally, in my opinion. But it's one of the reasons I went into it. Aren't there neurons in the heart? So there's the enteric nervous system. So we have neurons in the digestive system. I've heard there's neurons in the heart. I don't, I'll have to do some research on that. I'm sure there probably are, but honestly, I don't know. It's a really good question. I should know. I teach it, but I don't. But the enteric nervous system, like the second gut, there are definitely neurons and neural cells in the digestive system, the enteric system. The Artist's Way book by Julian Cameron has exercise to reconnect with the joy of the inner child. Yeah. She calls it filling the pond. Like, it jumps. Like, if you always take out fish at the pond, your soul, then it's empty. So you have to gauge in real life activities as fill the pond. For sure. Yeah, I think that's 100% right. It's a beautiful. People have called me childlike when I'm really in a good place. And what was cool is my ex-girlfriend, we broke up maybe 6 months ago. She wanted kids, I didn't, is essentially, or I wanted kids, she didn't, is essentially what happened. We're still really good friends. We get along. But I think one of the best compliments I ever got as a boyfriend was that she said, I feel like I can be a child again around you sometimes. Because she's from Ukraine, Russia. It's very like, and she started to be more playful. So I think as you release emotion and as you connect to this field, you do become more childlike, but not childish. You can also, in a second, snap to like the adult. When you need to be the adult, you can be the adult. When you need to be the child, you're the child, right? To be able to shift between being a mature adult and a playful child, like it's a way to have really good relationships, and it's a way to also be creative, right? When you're a child, it's a way to be a leader too. I found, like, to have that inner child, if you own a company or something, or you're a leader of a group where people can have fun, but they know it's like, okay, now it's time to work, and they take you serious as a serious person too. Some people go too much inner child, right? And nothing gets done. And some people are too adult, and you don't want to work with those people because they suck. Inner child is something I've been doing for a little over 2 years, can be very powerful. There's a book, you guys can look it up. I don't remember who read it, called Play. This guy was having like anxiety attacks and whatnot. I think it's just called Play. And he said he just started playing like he was a kid again, and he cured his anxiety. He would go out and like roll in the dirt and stuff, Yeah, it's a good book. I haven't read that book in a long time, The Way of the Artist, or The Artist's Way, whatever it's called. Let's see. Science is always making new discovery and refuting discoveries of science. Hold to science. Yep, that's right. 100%, Nicole. Science is a process, actually. I mean, there are very few things that are actually settled, right, in science. Very, very few things. We can have 2 + 2 = 4. That's like a math thing that's mostly settled. Though a few years ago, people were actually arguing whether 2 + 2 = 4 or not. And then, believe it or not, some mathematicians, like the law of gravity. But even the law of gravity, we still have, maybe that's not the ultimate law, if you go to quantum physics. But great comment. Any other questions? Feel free to chime in if you have any questions.
Yeah, I got in on the end.
Yeah. Who is this? iPhone 13 Pro J. How's it going? Hello?
Go on, baby.
Do you have something to say?
Doesn't sound like it.
Okay. Anybody else? Cool. Well, I will download this lecture later, upload it to YouTube, put it on the site, and this is the link to where all the recordings are. Okay, so it's dillonfree.com/recordings. That will be sent out on Meetup as well, so you can go there. And dillonfree.com is where the free program is. And again, do I still have this link? Yes. And this link here is a really good crash course in letting go of emotion. The slide. Do you mind showing the slide of your contacts again? I'm going to send out the slides. So I can definitely show it again. I'll show it really quickly. Let's see. But I'm also going to send it out. Oh, let's go. I think it's way up at the top. Yeah. So this is a slide of contacts. I'm going to send this out to everybody. I'm going to try to start doing more on YouTube. I only have like 10 videos on there. I'm going to try to, but I do most everything on TikTok. And then I have this automatic thing that sends it to Instagram, that sends it to Facebook, that sends it to YouTube. So I use this automatic thing. I post on TikTok, and then it goes to the rest of the stuff. But I'm going to try to do more dedicated videos on YouTube as well. So if you want to screenshot that. But again, I'm going to be sending all of this out. And there's the email I use. Reach out to me. I have 55 unread emails. I had like 300 last week, so I'm making progress. So if you email me, I promise I'll get to it. Because I run other seminars too, so that's why. Well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. This was this is the first time that I've presented this material, so it's new for me, and I hope you like it. And if there's any feedback or criticism or something I should cut or change, or you don't like the way I said something, please let me know. I have thick skin or no skin. I don't care. I want to hear. I just want to make it better. And I think next time I'm going to put a poll in Meetup for the next topic, because I'm trying to, every month we're hanging around letting go, but we're also doing some other things. So we've done goal setting. We did the dark side, and in February, I think that's what we did. And then maybe not. Anyways, we're doing slightly different topics each month. So I'll put a poll up to see what we want to do next month, probably April, early April. Thank you all so much for coming. I always enjoy this. This is the highlight of my month to do these talks. So I really enjoy it. I wish we were in person so we could all meet each other. I will try to do some in person if you're New York based, and you can come and we can all meet each other. It's always fun in person. Thank you. Yeah, it'll be in NYC. Thank you, Meryl, Selma, Alexander. Selma, I just saw your, what other workshops? I do a few different ones. I think the most popular is the dark side, and then just the traditional letting go one as well. And then one on emotional trauma, which is really letting go, but like getting into people who've been through some real SHIT. So anybody who's NYC, we'll try to do one soon. Thank you, Irma. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, and then please reach out if you have any questions. Cool. Yeah, the emotional trauma one. I forgot the seminars. I have one lined up that is, I don't know if you all would be interested. I have two I've been working on slides for. One is on beauty, like using beauty to improve our life. And like we connect with the field of feeling, but how do we organize our world so like with beautiful art and music, and it's a big part of my life. It's like the third most important thing, and it's not as important as releasing and the field of feeling, but it adds like more of a buffer zone for you to be around beauty. Dark side was January. Thank you. So there's beauty, and then the other one was I have two slides I'm working on. One is an anatomy of positive emotions, and another is anatomy of negative emotions. So in those, I was going to go through like, from all these years of releasing, what fear is like, what shame is like, what guilt is like really go into those. And then I thought, as I was doing this, like we could actually do a whole talk on fear. We could do a whole talk on anxiety. Oh, we also did a seminar on letting go of anxiety. That's what it was. I couldn't remember. So we could go into each emotion separately as something we could do. Or we could do all the negative emotions at once, all the positive emotions at once. So anyways, I'll put a poll together and send it out. Yeah, I think fear would be a really good one. Thanks, Atika. That would be cool to do. And please reach out. I'd love to talk to you more. All right. Letting go on anxiety. I'm new. You're welcome, Selma. And if you go again to dillonfried.recordings, the anxiety talk is up there. If anybody has anxiety, check that out. Okay. Oh, sorry. I sent that only to Paula. It's when somebody messages, it instantly switches to the person who messaged me, so, like individual. So it's dillonfried.com/recordings. Yeah, and then we'll do a poll and see what we want to talk about next, and hopefully do something in person for anybody NYC based. All right, all. Pleasure talking to you. Have a wonderful Sunday, and let's meet again soon. Bye-bye. Let me stop the recording.